So, guys, it's that time of the week again. Obviously, due to the social media boycott last week, and the fantasy kickabout wasn't online, but we are back with another episode. I'm back with two gents again in O'Hara and Dave. So, welcome back to the podcast, lads. I know it's been a mental week, mental couple of weeks for football fans. So we will start by touching on obviously the protests that took place at Old Trafford and obviously at the Lowry Hotel on Sunday. I might just touch on it just from my perspective. Initially, when obviously the news broke, because obviously I went off my personal social media as well, so I didn't get any sense of a protest was happening literally until the breaking news or a couple of the videos were starting to come into the group. But initially, my thought was, why are the supporters distracting the players and with such a big game to be played? That was my initial thought. And then obviously a couple of messages into the group, then a bit of sense was made that right, they're planning to try stop the game, obviously to try impact the Glazers, the owners. And then as I suppose the couple of hours unfolded, as much as I wanted the game to go ahead, I was almost happy that it didn't go ahead. But then you looked at the incidents of Man United fans breaking into Old Trafford. And of course, I wouldn't condone any kind of violence. I know there's a police officer that was injured. There was equipment that was damaged. There was abuse thrown towards Graham Souness and Jamie Carragher. So I wouldn't condone any of that. But I'm just wondering if, we'll say in a year's time, if we'd say the Glazers do end up selling Manchester United, because obviously it won't be a straightforward process. But if in a year's time will we look back on that moment, and as crazy as it was, and maybe like protest shouldn't happen in that way, but will we look back on it and think maybe it was the right thing to happen? My mind's kind of a bit all over the place with it, but I might just come to you, Dave, first as a Man United fan. What were your thoughts on the protests?
Um, Very similar to yourself in that it was really hard to gauge how you felt about it because if you were watching it on Sky Sports, you were getting this feeling that from Jamie, from Gary, from Graham Souness, like that the guys had come in and they'd been relatively peaceful, and then they just made their way again, and all of that kind of sounded fine. I guess, well, not breaking into the stadium, but that it had been peaceful. And then as it starts to kind of unfold, you hear the stuff about start seeing videos of the camera equipment being thrown around, and you're seeing lads climbing all over the goalposts and everything else. And that for me was just, no, that isn't right. For a United fan, Old Trafford's hollow ground. You whatever about the thousands, and then one of the guys mentioned it in our WhatsApp group. The guys who packed outside Old Trafford and protested peacefully and made their voices heard. Those guys have kind of been lost in all of this, and if Sky Sports had televised the amount of people that turned up outside, I mean, I feel like that would have been a holy crap moment of like, where is this kind of going? I wouldn't like to think that this will be a good catalyst, because in the long run, that's going to somewhat condone what happened, and it shouldn't be condoned. There was, Souness said there's always going to be an idiot or two, and that's true. But I don't think under any circumstances it should be seen as a good thing, even if they do sell it, even if they do decide, no, listen, this is too much hassle. or too much abuse or whatever. Even if they do decide to sell up, it'll still be, for me, it'll still be a black mark on our history the day our own fans smashed the doors down and went in and disrespected our club.
And they're obviously really valid points. But the question I'm going to put to you, O'Hara, is we see protests in kind of every walk of life. And how often do they actually make a difference there and then in the moment? So I don't know whether if it was Liverpool fans doing the exact same what United fans did, I don't know what your views would have been on it from that Liverpool perspective. But obviously, looking at Sky Sports the other day, Sky Sports News, what were you thinking, and what were your views? Were you just like, oh, United scumbags, or?
No, I wasn't. Like, when you see the footage of the lads, like you were saying, like the lads who were, roaring abuse at the pundits, or that one idiot like throwing the camera and stuff like that, your automatic reaction is like, oh, look at that fucking gobshite, like. But and then we've just been so used to then tying that in with, oh, United's gone or whatever. Like, but like at the end of the day, the protest concept, I was completely on board with it from that point of view. The way, like you were saying, like Dave was saying there, like the way, like they protested outside the stadium, which is brilliant. But then to actually go in and all file onto the pitch and be wrecking parts of around the pitch, or like Dave said, going off the goals and stuff, that's taking it a bit too far. Like if it were Anfield, because the thing is, it's very relevant to Liverpool fans, because we were going through this about 10 years ago, 2010, when we had Higgs and Gillette as the owners, and they, like the Glazers, nearly ran the club into the ground. Like, and so what happened at the weekend, it was kind of just the last straw, really, from the looks of it, because the likes of the lads on Match of the Day would have been saying, oh, it wasn't really the right type of protest to be doing, but like the fans, it isn't the first time the fans have protested over the years. Since the Glazers came in, it hasn't sat right with the fans. And so the fans have, like, even as far back as 2009, 2010, when the fans would have had all the green and yellow scarves, and even when the likes of Beckham had come back playing for AC Milan at the time or something, and he ended up wearing a green and yellow scarf at the end of the match. It's been a big issue for United fans for years. But they've kind of exhausted all the avenues they can, because the Glazers are so entirely unresponsive. Because, as I said, the lads on Match Day be like, oh, it's kind of the wrong protest to go about. But like, what protest did they expect them to do? Do scarves, put up banners during matches, put up banners outside the stadiums, do, leafleting before stadiums, putting out like the fan media, putting out, their own kind of press releases and stuff like that. They've done all that. It's not like they haven't done all that. They've done that for years, and it's just continued to fall on deaf ears. So I can entirely understand it, because while Liverpool fans didn't actually, they didn't do a protest to such an extent that they stormed onto the pitch or whatever, but like there was marches and there was massive protests outside the stadium, like, and at every match, trying to get the owners out of the club, because they just don't stand for anything that the club or the fans or the history of the club stands for. But they were left with no choice. They were literally, it's like a child who's just entirely furious with some sort of situation, and then parent is then just entirely unresponsive. Like, it's obviously going to be even more infuriating. You're like, come on, will you just listen to me? So what did they expect, really?
O'Hara, out of interest though, you guys had this situation 10 years ago, and Liverpool fans went out and marched and they protested, and they did get new owners without having to destroy, Anfield, without having to break in and make a show of the cop. Like there will be killings if so-called Liverpool fans broke into Anfield and started swinging out of goalposts and dragging the nets down. Like, there would be, Merseyside would be a bloodbath of the people that decided to disrespect the club like that. And it's like 10 days ago, Chelsea fans protested the ESL, and Sky Sports went to Stamford Bridge, and there was thousands of them outside, including Petr Cech. And there is a way to do it. Now, whether the outcome will be the same, and whether the Glazers would just put their fingers in their ears and just be like la 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 la, that's another thing. But I feel like there were plenty of other avenues to go down before smashing the place up.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, Dave. Like, 100%, because that's the point. That they went the one step further. Of they were outside, but then it was like, oh, we're going to storm in and wreck the place. Where, yeah, if Liverpool fans had done that, it would have been. That it's very hard to have mixed feelings about, or it's very hard not to have mixed feelings about the one that happened the other day, because they had to do something at some point, because they've had to deal. United fans have had to deal with this crap for so long, and then United were one of the the main pushers of the Super League. So it was obviously just the final straw for them. But it's mad how they definitely should have protested, but it's mad how it's then being portrayed in the media, especially like the coverage obviously was by Sky Sports because they were going to be doing the match. But they just kept reiterating, oh no, it's really good, it's a really peaceful protest, where there was absolutely no backlash for the fact that thousands of fans stormed into the stadium and were wrecking the place. And like even because I hadn't seen much footage of it literally as it was happening, and it was obviously just as we were kind of waiting to see if the kickoff would happen, that then they were going back over footage. But like seeing some of them like bouncing up and down on the banners that were there on the stand, like that was embarrassing, really. Like how this is the problem with these kind of protests, because they'll have been organized with the right intentions, and they'll have been organized by the right people, but you'll always get it's mob mentality, literally, by definition. You just get a load of people who like to join in because there's a big crowd of gobshites doing something. Then like, oh class, we'll go in here and we'll fucking have a man. We'll get videoed and we'll be on social media and we'll be on Sky News.
But the thing to that is, I think it's again mob mentality. Fans see this opportunity, or if you want to call them fans, not fans, whatever, see this opportunity to get inside the stadium. I genuinely think a lot of other clubs or fans of clubs would have done something similar if they'd seen that opportunity. There would have been a handful that would have went in, and then another handful said, oh, let's see what they're doing, sure, we'll follow them in. Some of them maybe not really thinking what they're actually doing and whether they're harming the club or harming obviously the infrastructure of the club. But I just wanted to touch on a point about kind of Chelsea and Abramovich, where obviously I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I wonder if the Chelsea fans, they didn't obviously want to enter the European Super League, but are they almost happy enough to forgive Abramovich because of what he's brought to that club since whatever 2002, 2003, whenever it was? I don't know, because obviously I'm not a Chelsea fan, so maybe they can forgive Abramovich a lot easier than the United fans can forgive the Glazers, or Liverpool fans will forgive FSG, for example. So maybe that's one of the reasons why it was a lot more peaceful there and then in the moment. But I think it was a good protest in the sense that they were trying to potentially stop the game, and obviously Czech came out saying cleared away, whether that was their intentions, but cleared away for the bus. And I do think maybe if the United fans on the weekend had just bombarded the bus and not let the players out, and even if the bus managed to find an escape route, when it got closer and closer to Old Trafford, there was fans blocking the bus getting even closer to. I wonder if that would have been just almost the perfect, I don't want to say perfect, but the best way to protest, where you're stopping a game, you're actually, something's actually happening. There's a consequence to these protests. But Dave, I just wanted to, there was a couple of ones I was writing down when we were chatting, but obviously there was protests against the Glazers initially when there was a small group, I think initially when they took over 2005, and then there was obviously a much bigger one in 2010. But nothing again really came of that protest. I know there was obviously the anti-Glazer scarves, flags, jerseys, but again, whatever, certain amount of years later, they're still here. They're still causing havoc, even more havoc than they had previously. So that was the first point first thing I was gonna touch on. Next one, I know there's been a lot of people, and I think Souness did it as well on the weekend, indicating that one of the reasons United fans are protesting and are getting a little bit out of control is due to Man United not winning. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And the final point is, I've heard rumors, I don't know how true these are, but United fans are planning to head over to America and literally stand outside the Glazers' houses and demand some sort of a conversation from them. I don't know, do you think that's a good idea or not? But if you want to touch on a couple of those points first, Dave.
Sure. Okay. Well, the first point kind of melds in a little bit to the point about Souness is yes, United fans have been a small minority, at least, have been opposed to the Glazers for the guts of 11 years. But they've coughed up the guts of £1 billion in that time when it came to in the transfer market. And then really that's the crux of it. United fans, in my opinion, don't tend to get too bogged down or too concerned about what goes on upstairs if they're winning. So, that's why the group was really, really small, back 2012, 2013, we're getting to Champions League finals or getting to winning the leagues under the last couple of years of Sir Alex's reign. And there was rumblings, but it was mostly about the amount that they were taking out of the club and interest payments and everything else. But now it's rolled on and we're £1 billion down the drain, and some really top managers have come and gone, and we've really only got an FA Cup, a League Cup and Europa League to show for it. And for me personally, I never really had this burning desire to get the Glazers out of the club. I didn't feel like they interfered. I felt like when we needed to spend money, they spent money. Now, whether it was spent wisely, whether it was spent on the right players, whether they were scouted right, all of that's a completely different topic. But when a new manager came in and they needed backing, 250 million, 300 million, whatever, the funds were made available for us to sign who the club felt we needed to sign, pay them the extortionate wages that we felt they needed to earn, and they put the money up. Either whether they took it out of the club or not, again, another point, but they made the money available. So now we're getting to a point. The ESL thing kicked it off for me. That was the first real indicator of this is what these guys are capable of if and when they are able to go behind the manager's back, they're able to go behind the board's back, they're able to go behind the players' backs. They are able to sign them up for something that is absolutely wrong, that we shouldn't have even been entertained. But it was the first real thing where I went, holy shit, these guys need to go. They need to be out of here. And I think that's probably what Gary Neville, I think, said it. You know, there's been rumblings over the years, but this was just like, it was like the spark to the flame. You know, it was just, it's gone under the table for a little bit. You know, Ollie's brought back the feel good factor, and you know, a bit of progression and a bit of success and everything else. But this just set it all off again. And there was a middle point that you asked me, and I can't remember what it was.
Middle point was, so we touched on United not winning. That was the one for Souness. Protest 2010, and then obviously United fans planning to head over to America to confront the Glazers.
Yeah, what absolute utter nonsense. I mean, like, we've never heard these guys speak. So on what planet they think they're going to get over there and get a conversation with these guys who they have no interest in talking to? They have no interest in listening to them. Like, on the other side of the pond, they've just won the Super Bowl. You know, they've got Tom Brady. You know, they're happy where they need to be happy, and they can shit out a statement to copy and paste to try and appease fans. But it is, if there's guys who do that, they're mental. They've got more money than sense to be flying over to the States would they even know where to go? I mean, like, honestly.
Apparently addresses and everything over there are on public display, so they can.
I would imagine they're in Tampa, but that's just a stab in the dark. But either way, like, these guys don't answer to fans. Like, it would be a waste of time, because they're just not. They're not going to convince these guys. Like, we are a wonderful cash cow. Like, we really are. We're a wonderful cash cow. They've taken out, you know, a really obscene amount of money. I haven't been to Old Trafford in a couple of years. I had no idea that Old Trafford had fallen under such disrepair. And like, not to make it sound like a shabby stadium, but apparently Carrington leaves a lot to be desired in terms of being one of the biggest clubs in the world. They haven't, the money that they've spent have been on transfers. It hasn't been on new on repair or upkeep or maintenance. You're looking at Leicester building a brand new training center based on the money that we gave them for Harry Maguire. That's a really, really well run club, and you get to United and there's rust hanging out of the gates and everything else. There's a lot of that sort of stuff that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's why the United fans had such easy access to the ground. Maybe the gates were off. You just
know. Yeah.
Just O'Hara, before I come over to you for a couple of points on maybe Hicks and Gillette and so, if I just want to ask Dave one more thing. Do you think, in terms of with the Glazers, that obviously post Ferguson they've spent, we'll say, close to $1 billion on transfers? Do you think that was catch up for not planning under Ferguson and kind of towards the end of Ferguson's era? Like, for example, we sold Cristiano Ronaldo for the record fee of 80 million. And if memory serves me right, we brought in Michael Owen on a free transfer, Obertan, and possibly Bebe came in that summer as well.
Yeah.
So do you think that money is almost like a catch-up, right? We don't have the magic man to make everything work and make kind of, let's say, no, I don't say average players, but good players into very good players, and just build this mentality. I think it was catch up by throwing that money at we'll say 3 different style managers.
In short, no. I think it was like the Glazers employ who they feel will make the right decisions. They have no clue. They have no, like at the time, they hadn't a clue who Cristiano Ronaldo was or what his worth was or whatever. They didn't know. They might have had some inkling as to the worth of what Sir Alex Ferguson brought to the table, but they didn't know, you know. So I think they employed the right, well, who they felt were the right people. So Woodward, his right hand man, Matt Judge, and what we have is for the longest time has been a shocking scouting system. Like it's really poor, you know, just from what we've seen over the last couple of years. There's so many different clubs with much better systems in place, but I'd say they just threw the money at them. You know, when Woodward or Matt Judge came to them and said, "Listen, we need 90 million for Pogba, or we need 35 million for Mkhitaryan, or 50 million for Fred, or whatever," I don't think they asked too many questions. I think they just felt they employed them to make these decisions and to make these calls, and they could give a shit if it worked out or if they were the right players or whatever. I think they just understood that there was going to be a rebuilding process. You know, replacing the manager, and that the squad needed a bit of an overhaul, and they provided the funds for it.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me that Fred cost us 50 million. I actually genuinely had forgotten that. So, well, Harry, I'm going to throw this one to you. I was listening to another podcast today, and they were saying over in America, I wouldn't be a big NFL fan, but over in America, when franchise wins the Super Bowl, I believe that the owners are the ones that go up and lift the trophy. How could you imagine how that will go down if, take last year, Liverpool winning the league first time in 30 years, and the Liverpool owners going up ahead of Henderson, Salah, Mane, Van Dijk to lift that trophy ahead of the players that put blood, sweat and tears out on that, or left blood, sweat and tears out on that pitch. How well do you think that would go down with football fans in at both clubs, for example?
Oh, it'd be absolutely mental, wouldn't it? Like, I think, like you can't even begin to think of what it would be like. In fairness, it would be far worse at United because of the reputation the Glazers have. But even so, like obviously at the time, FSG had, you know, right then they had, you know, we had finally won the league. We won the Champions League the year before and had gotten to the final again the year before that. So they were very much in the good books. But you couldn't possibly imagine any of them. Like imagine John Henry walking up, and because it was so iconic as well, the fact that it was Kenny Dalglish handing the trophy to Henderson, like the last manager of the team, of the manager of the team that had last won the league for Liverpool, and the added sentimentality of the fact that he was the manager to have signed Henderson for Liverpool. So like such an iconic moment of Dalglish giving the trophy to Henderson. You couldn't possibly imagine John Henry having walked up and taken it instead. Yeah, and that was another thing. That wasn't that one of the rumors when the Super League talk was going on, that was one of the reasons the owners were so in favour of it, because they were like, "Oh, sure, class, we'll have the owners going up and collecting the trophy at the end." It would have just been, it would be a shambles. You couldn't even begin to even comprehend it. Really, it wouldn't. I don't think it would ever.
Yeah.
It would never grow legs.
The other point I wanted to ask you, Lara, was Hicks and Gillette, when they were at Liverpool, obviously there was a lot of fans wanting them out at the time. Like you were saying, John Henry and the owners have been in the good books. Have they been, in your eyes, have they been in the good books up until the European Super League, or was there patches before that you're a bit unhappy about? But does it also show that if you get rid of one owner, another owner comes in that could potentially be worse?
Oh, 100% that could be the case, because this is the thing, and absolutely, FSG were not continually in the good books. Like, this was one of the things when the Super League thing was going out, and Liverpool fans were in such uproar about it, and you'd have fans. It's all on social media and stuff, or different podcasts would have been talking to people and fans of other clubs. When you're a fan of a particular club, obviously news to do specifically with other clubs goes below the radar. You don't, like, even when we were talking about Chelsea earlier, you'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I actually really don't know what Chelsea fans, how they're reacting to that, because you're obviously so engrossed in all the news of your own club. But that's the thing, where people were like to Liverpool fans, oh, do you not like your owners? I'm like, no, we absolutely never said that. They're currently generally in the good books. Like, we can stand them at the moment, but like it definitely wasn't the case of plain sailing since they arrived, and they've been fantastic owners. Like, they've made a lot of mistakes, and that was the worrying thing about the Super League, because they've made 3 or 4 big mistakes. Like, they made the mistake over ticket prices, where there was about a year of consulting with fans over the prices and saying, the fans throughout the whole thing were saying, no, that's far too expensive. They were going to make, I can't remember what tier of tickets, but they were, the whole thing was they were making £77 tickets. And for the whole, as far as I was reading at the time and recently, there was over a year of consultation with fan groups, and the fans obviously throughout the whole time were saying, absolutely don't do this. It's far too expensive. It won't fly. And then they went ahead and did it. And that's what then provoked. We had our own protests where, I can't remember the game, it might have been a West Brom game, but that all the or a large chunk of the fans walked out on the 77th minute. There's been plenty of stuff. There's been furloughing staff at the start of the pandemic and stuff like that, where these kind of things, they make the mistake, and then there's absolute uproar, and then they kind of trod back in. We're like, oh, sorry, we didn't mean that. We're so sorry. Like, we're only learning. We keep making, we're making mistakes, but you have to bear with. Like, that's why the Super League was so huge, because it was like, oh, here, they keep making mistakes, like massive mistakes, and it's by not consulting before they make the decision. And then it's then the backlash that they then turn around like, oh yeah, crap, sorry, we finally, but it's not that they finally understand. It's like, okay, I just don't think we're going to be able to push this over. But I think, like, thinking of it from the United point of view, that I think that's why I'd have a lot of sympathy with the United fans for having to do the protest, because they've really been pushed to it. Like, I understand, like it's hard for us who wouldn't, like, we might get to a game a year or a game every couple of years kind of, but like, say again, in direct contrast between Liverpool and United, Liverpool, when Hicks and Gillette were at the height of like, this is a disaster, we need to get them out, that's when a lot of kind of the prominent fan groups that we know now, so like the likes of Spirit of Shankly, and there'd be a few other like fan media groups, so like the Redmen TV, the Anfield Rap and stuff like that, they all kind of originated around that time. Spirit of Shankly especially, to fight Hicks and Gillette and what they were doing to the club. But the thing about that is that then when FSG came in, there has been fan communication between the club and the fans, and there's, they've hired people specifically to actually converse with the fans and those specific fan groups. So, like, for example, there with the Super League thing again, the Liverpool CEO, Billy Hogan, I think yesterday or today or within the next couple of days, will be meeting members of Spirit of Shankly, literally to go over and actually speak with a fan group about the thought process behind the Super League, and obviously why they went wrong. But then there'll actually be a conversation where they've tried to do that, and while obviously, as I said, they've made big mistakes in the past, they have been in contact with supporters throughout, or at least at a lot of times, where if you're a United fan, like that, the United would have plenty of podcasts. Like, I'm sure you'd be far more aware than I would, but like Full-Time Dells and stuff like that. But like none, like as much as these fan media has just grown and grown because of the lack of interaction between the fans and the clubs. So, like if you're a United fan group, for the last 15 years, if you're getting absolutely no response to anything you ever say, like even the video of Glazer coming out today and just entirely ignoring the reporter and the questions of like, do you have anything to say to the United fans? Do you have anything to apologize for? And like, even just the courtesy of even acknowledging that this person is there. Like, he just walked through and he acted as if she didn't exist. And that's why United fans are so up in arms about it. And it seems like it's entirely alien to me right now to be arguing the point for United fans because it's very much out of my comfort zone. But it feels like they just were left with no other opportunity, no other way to turn. Because if you've been for 15 years, because this is the thing, like I was saying, Dave, in terms of people over here, we would only, we love getting over to a match every now and again, but even the most lucky of us, we'd still only get over to a handful of games a year. And so a lot of us would only get over to maybe one or two a year, or one or two every couple of years. But like, imagine living over in Liverpool or in Manchester and seeing all this go on, and you're going to the match every single week, and any sort of an issue, you're getting absolutely nothing in response. I just feel I don't know what else they could do. They must just be entirely exhausted by it. And the Super League was the final straw, really. So you can see why they picked the United and Liverpool match, because it's the biggest match in England. It's the equivalent, really. And obviously you'll have people arguing it's the Manchester Derby, or Arsenal, Tottenham and stuff like that. But realistically, it's United Liverpool is the biggest draw match, like draw of a match in the Premier League. It's the equivalent of, if we had no idea what's going on in the Spanish league, you'll still be interested in tuning in for El Clasico, just because it's going to be a big feisty match. Teams hate each other. It's going to be interesting. So you can see why they picked the United Liverpool match, because it'd be the one that would cause the most reaction for it to not go ahead. But yeah, like they basically were left with no other option.
Yeah. Just to confirm, O'Hara, we don't hate you, don't worry. So he hasn't gotten to that stage of the friendship yet.
Yeah.
Just I'm gonna finish up on this topic, because I'm sure we're all kind of sick to death almost of talking about it. But come to you, Dave, first, and then let O'Hara have the final word. Kind of in short, do you think these protests will make a difference, possibly short term, medium, long term, and also with the rearranged United Liverpool game, do you think that'll go ahead?
I honestly don't know. I've no idea what the strength of Glazer's resolve is. As I said earlier on, we're a great cash cow if it means just blocking out their ears for a couple of months, and just pushing their way through it. Also, I'm not really aware of too many buyers that could afford the club, because if you're going off rumor, they estimate the club at being worth about 3 billion. So unless someone from Qatar or the Middle East, or the other fella who helped invent Spotify is a secret United fan. Unless it's one of those lads, that you're not going to be able to afford it. I would like to think that they will get to a point where they'll just say, okay, this is far more hassle than we really need. We'll just buy Southampton and and let that be that. But I like base. This has been like 16 years now, and they've shown no sign of budging. That would lead me to believe that they'll probably stick with it a bit. But I would like to think that this won't go in vain. Sorry, there was a second part to that question.
Whether do you think United-Liverpool game will actually go ahead without any trouble with the rearranged fixture?
It really should do. It should do. Because the conversations being had now, the focus has been dragged onto this. There is no point in constantly getting that game delayed. It's already punished the players. It's already punished the manager. It's already punished the staff, that they now have to play two really big games. Really, like playing Leicester, a really, really energetic, really good side, and then having to play Liverpool again within, give or take an hour or two, within 48 hours, where you really do need to be playing your starting 11. The players don't deserve that. They don't deserve to be to have worked all season to get so close to a second place finish, only for their own fans to put the boot in for the club. Like, I wouldn't argue that it's for the greater good, but with 4 games left, they don't deserve that degree of disruption a second time.
Perfect. Final word to you, O'Hara, on this topic.
Yeah, just following on, just obviously when Dave was saying there, one of the things that really does annoy me about this kind of thing, it's purely about the fixture pile up, in that, like, obviously, like Sky Sports coming out and saying, the rearranged fixture is causing quite a headache for fixture for United, because they're already playing every midweek till the end of the season, where there was absolutely no regard for Liverpool last season, when we had a League Cup game and a game for the Club World Cup scheduled literally 24 hours apart in two competitions in 2 different continents. And then the FA were kind of just, yeah, well, you're going to have to play it. And there was absolutely no leeway given for changing the date for the League Cup game. So that's just something I wanted to say. That was, it was really pissing me off, where like everyone was like, oh, poor United, we're going to have to play that game somewhere in between the other games. I was like, no one gave a shit that Liverpool had to play 2 competitions in 2 continents.
News only came out about an hour ago, and nobody's been giving it the poor United just yet.
all those Anfield raps that he does be listening to.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I like you were saying, it's the kind of thing where if you were a child, the childish reaction is, oh, I hope nothing comes of it, and I hope it screws the club, and I hope they continue to go to shit. But like, that's just that's the type of opinion those gobshites who were throwing abuse at Souness and Carragher, that's the type of, or like jumping on the banners or throwing the camera and stuff, that's the type of opinion they'd have, where they're like, oh, we don't care, just make it worse. Where like, realistically, as a fan of the sport and a fan of the competitiveness of the clubs, and like with the standing of United, like United and Liverpool are the two biggest clubs in England. And so you wouldn't want terrible ownership of prick Americans who have absolutely no interest in the club, in the club's history and fans, for the club then to go to waste because of it. So, like you were saying, I do hope it does bring change, because, again, thinking back to when it was Liverpool, it's so exhausting and just demoralising to. And like we've obviously had a flavour of it recently with all the mental news coming out about the Super League, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted by this. This is entirely overwhelming. Can we just go back to enjoying football? And so for all the United fans who the owners are ruining the football, then I hope there is eventually a good resolution, but not good enough for them to ever win the Premier League again.
Nice way for a Liverpool fan to finish that topic. Yeah, I definitely obviously back up what you're saying, O'Hara. Hopefully change does come about, and again, as we said, it probably wasn't the best way to actually protest breaking into stadiums, but I don't know, if change comes and we get football back to somewhat what it was like, where we were sitting down enjoying a game of football again, I don't know, we might look back and say maybe it was worth it, maybe it wasn't. But we might just move on to another topic. We might let Dave start this, as it probably is his favourite topic at the moment, but Gareth Bale. I just love to like, we obviously know your thoughts on Gareth Bale, Dave, but I just love to strike up a little debate, and I don't know where O'Hara stands on it, but we'll give the first word to you on Gareth Bale and what's your thoughts about his season and his move, obviously, to Spurs. You have 10 minutes starting now.
Yeah, okay, right. You know what, I've said it a couple of times over the course of the season. What a waste. You know, do you know what? I have an awful lot of respect for Tottenham Hotspur as a club. I've a lot of respect for Daniel Levy, despite how much he's pulled our pants down over players over the years. Like he's a shrewd businessman, but I do like the club. I do like the players. I do like how they play football. But he is just, for me, he's just such a waste. And you know, for this season in particular, no, do you know what? I'm going to scale it back. I just think Gareth Bale actually flatters to deceive. I think I had a look at this, and this cropped up this afternoon, and I will rattle off some stats to you, because I just think it's staggering that it gets kind of missed. I had a look this season, right? Just for this season, right? He came in on loan. He's played 30 games, made 30 appearances for 14 goals. Right, so straight away, that actually doesn't sound too bad. You know, it doesn't. Those numbers sound good. And then you look at it, and 7 of those he scored in 3 games. And that started me on a little bit of a thread, because that has happened to Gareth Bale practically his whole career. So from like 2014-15 at Madrid, he made 50 appearances, scored 17 goals, scored 6 of them in 3 games. Next season, 32 appearances, 19 goals, 9 of them in 3 games. 16-17, he made 27 appearances, 9 goals, 4 in 2 games. 17-18, 43 appearances, 21 goals, 8 of them in 4 games. 18-19, 42 appearances, 14 goals. He had a 13-game drought. Actually, that season was the only one where there's a bit of a break. Next season, 31 appearances, 3 goals. You guessed it, 2 of them in 1 game. and then we have this season. So, I mean, a lot of people will feel, listen, he's got 3 or 4. Can't remember. Is it 4 Champions Leagues to his name? And you know, he didn't even start in 2 of those finals. He is just such an underachiever. I wanted him at United so bad, like a year or 2 after Ronaldo moved on. But he's so unprofessional. I just think he's a terrible professional. Like, he is on 692,000 euros a week at Real Madrid. For this season that he's been at Spurs, they have paid 346,000 euros a week. He's been injured for 11 games and he's been on the bench for 10. No wonder they signed up to the Super League. They must have spent nearly as much on him as they did on that bloody stadium. And he's just, oh my God. Like, if you thought for a second, like Ronaldo or Messi being left on the bench for a Champions League, now Bruno Fernandes, Bruno would swing for a manager if he was left on the bench for a Champions League final. But he just seems so fine with it all. And I mean, at the end of his career, he might have plenty of Champions League medals to show for it, and the numbers might sound good, but he's really, really underachieved for as talented as he is, and he has all the ability in the world. And now he scored 4 against Sheffield United, and like 3 against Sheffield United. Like, well done. Yeah. So, yeah, that's me done. Like, I'm just.
Jeez, guys, you finished in record time there. You've another 7 minutes or so, 6 minutes to go.
I just thought I'd rattle through it and not take too much time, because he doesn't deserve to take up that much time in this podcast. Like, when he's good, you know, obviously he's great. But at this point now, he's nearly 30. He's wasted the last 3 years of his career. And you know what? If he goes back to Real Madrid and doesn't try to go out on loan, or doesn't try to get a move, or makes some sort of a spoof about wanting to get back into the team, if Real Madrid win the Champions League, or, you know, come close to winning the league, like, Zidane's not getting sacked. So Zidane, the issue that he's had is still going to be there. If he decides that he's going to stay there and try and fight for his place or some shit, I will lose any respect any shred that I still have for him, that he's willing to sit there and waste his career for 700 grand a week. It's not about the money anymore. It can't possibly be about the money anymore. He's got more money than he will ever need. So surely, if you're in any way professional or a real footballer, you just want to play. And, you know.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I'm going to give you a round of applause for, like, Statman Dave. I think the official Statman Dave has a bit of competition with Dave Dent rattling all those stats off about Gareth Bale. But O'Hara, I'm going to come to you, and I was going to kind of play devil's advocate. Looking at Gareth Bale, I think it's 16 appearances in the Premier League, 9 goals. And when you compare that to Rashford, who's on 10 goals, you compare it to Jamie Vardy, who's on 13, Aubameyang, who's on 10. I don't know if you share the same views as Dave, or you have different views about Gareth Bale.
I'd have fairly similar ones now, I'd have to be honest. Because this is the thing, like that, you're saying there he has 9 goals, and the likes of Rashford and Aubameyang and all have 10, and it's like, oh, well, they're considered, you know, important players to their team, and they seem to be having decent seasons. But like that, what? Vardy has 13. Vardy, this is probably the most injury-prone season Vardy has had in the Premier League. Like, Aubameyang, I would consider Aubameyang is having an absolute nothing season. Arsenal are barely worth talking about these days, really. Like, this is it. Like Dave said, that's what is so entirely frustrating about Gareth Bale. He has 9 goals, but what? He got a hat-trick the other day, and he definitely got 2 in a couple of games, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So like that, because you'd be aware of it again from a fantasy football point of view. Because when you were saying there, when he got the hat-trick the other day, and you were like, oh, did anyone have him? I was genuinely really close to getting him. I was actually trying to fit him into the team and then couldn't afford him. And I was like, oh, sure, look, I'm probably better off because he'll either play and do absolutely nothing or he'll just be on the bench. And the only reason I was trying to get him in was because of the fact that Mourinho's gone. And so it was like, oh, well, maybe it was a case of Mourinho like didn't like him, and also he didn't like playing for Mourinho. So maybe he'll have a decent finish to the season now with the new manager. But it's just an absolute joke how he has the talent to turn it on and score a hat-trick or score a rake of goals in a couple of games. And then sure, like there was such a massive amount of this season where he was just sitting on the bench. And I remember Graham Souness saying it on Sky Sports at the time, being like, if I was him, I'd be coming out in the press saying, this is ridiculous, I should be playing. You know, I came here to play and be the star man. Where even as Souness was saying it, you're thinking, Bale isn't going to say that. Bale doesn't give a shit whether he plays or not. Bale is there to soak up, you know, any sort of fan coverage that he gets. Like, oh, brilliant, Gareth Bale is back to Tottenham. He's one of our own. All this bullshit. Like, he's there to maybe come on and score a few goals every now and again. But mainly, get back to England for a while, make another shit ton of money. And then I entirely expect him to go back to Real Madrid and sit on the bench and not give a shit. Because like that, he's been... And it's only in the recent year or two that I've kind of come around to this opinion. I've always kind of thought, you know, he's a great player and he was kind of misused at Real. But really, when you think about it, you can't, for years and years, be misjudged by managers. You know, like, this is the thing, like, it's a similar thing. I'm sorry to bring it back to Liverpool, but how there was always the abuse given to Henderson. Like, oh, Henderson is such a shit player. How does he always get picked? But, like, he continued to get picked by every Liverpool manager he played for and every England manager. And, like, he was made captain for a while. And, like, in my opinion, even currently would be a far better captain than Harry Kane. Harry Kane just has it as a token gesture because he needs it for his ego. But realistically, like,
actually, sorry to jump in there. I actually forgot how much O'Hara hates Kane. So we've a great topic of conversation here, lads.
Yeah, but this is the thing that was actually because I remember we were talking about that, and I was like, is it odd that I hate Harry Kane? Because me and my dad absolutely hate him. But then I was on a Liverpool, I think it was either a Liverpool Facebook, yeah, it was a Liverpool Facebook group, and someone put that point in. It was like, they put in the point, it was like, I don't know if I'm being controversial or not, but I can't stand Harry Kane. Am I the only one, or what's the story? And then all of the comments were just ripping into Harry Kane. I was like, oh, thank God, it's not just me. It seems to be most Liverpool fans. For some reason, because obviously it's not like he's specifically done anything to Liverpool. It's not like he's, you know, Van Nistelrooy or Henry when they were winning those teams' titles. But there's just something about him. Anyway, going back to Gareth Bale. I always liked Gareth Bale, and there's just obviously something there with the attitude, because if he's fine with sitting on the bench, or he's fine with like going off and playing for Wales, and he always comes out like he absolutely adores playing for Wales. He's far more a Wales player than a Real Madrid player. And like, you know, when he came out with that banner, it was like, what, Wales first, golf second, Real third, or Madrid third, or whatever. Like, that's so disrespectful to your club. And like, imagine any of our players did that, referencing the club that they currently play for. Like, you'd be like, fine, fuck off out of the club. Like, we've no time for you. But he's absolutely fine to just sit there, maybe come on every now and again. But like, even when Zidane blatantly didn't want him, and he came out then a couple of months ago and said, yeah, no, it was only ever the plan to come to Tottenham for a year. I'm going back to Real. End of. And like, straight away you're like, my God, that is so pathetic, to just have no drive in the game, to be fine to just go to Tottenham and be fine with absolutely making no real impact And then you're like, that's fine. I'm going back to Real. The manager hates me. Fans have no time for me. But I don't care because I still have 2 or 3 years left on the contract and they're going to pay me an absolute ton of money. And the only way he was actually going to try and get out of the club was when he was pushing for a move to a Chinese club, who I'm sure would have been paying, they would have been paying him probably $1 million a week. And that was, like when there's those kind of things coming out about him, you really start to lose the respect for him. And those couple of things recently where he was saying, yeah, I'm going to go back to Real. Just like, oh, how can you just have no drive for the game? And he's with still, like, he could be at the prime of his career if he had any drive. But it's just, I really don't understand it because you only have if you're a top quality player, you only have a very finite amount of time, 15, 20 years max as a quality player. Like, why would you waste it? And when you're retired, then you're like, oh, look, I scored this goal. Or like, yeah, I have all these Champions League medals. But like, what did you contribute to it? Like, all you then have is an absolute ton of money. And you're like, well, yeah, but you got to be a professional player. What did you do? Like, oh, I had a good start to the career, but then I kind of didn't give a shit.
I wonder if with Gareth Bale sitting on the bench next season, he might be up for jumping on a podcast or two. We can get the real insight. And Dave, you're definitely going to be on that one.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, right? If you just wanted what you get out of Gareth Bale, like in terms of numbers, Spurs could have just signed Jesse Lingard, right? He's got 9 goals in 12 games and decisive ones. Like he's made a difference. He's had assists. He's been man of the match. He's been, I think, player of the month as well, or at least was up for player of the month. And he cost, what was it, 2 million we got for the deal. Like in less than a month of having Gareth Bale, you would have already covered it, and he would have had a player. The different attitude makes. Jesse's attitude is just polar opposite. He just wants to play football. He wants to enjoy himself, and just the difference that it makes is just staggering. It's there for all to see,
Yeah. Just before we talk, just a couple of minutes about fantasy football. Obviously, kind of coming down to the crunch part of the season, especially for O'Hara, up there vying for some of the top 6 positions. Really quick, Dave. Who finishes in top 4 for you? Obviously, you're probably saying obviously City and United maybe. But who are filling the other 2 spots for you?
Chelsea and Leicester.
Chelsea and Leicester, yeah.
I think so.
O'Hara.
I think honestly, I think that's probably how it will end. I think dropping the points against Newcastle was kind of the final chance of, like, we absolutely needed to win that game for us to have any chance. And I know mathematically there's still a chance, and there's still a couple of the teams above us playing each other. Like you were saying, obviously United have to play Leicester, and I think City have to play Chelsea. So, there can be fixtures that go in our favour and that there's still a chance. But I think all of the crap that has happened this season through VAR, the pandemic, the injuries, everything, I think it's just become too much, and the players are just exhausted. And it's just like, okay, no, there isn't the drive really that there was for the last 3 or 4 years. So while it is still mathematically possible for Liverpool too, and obviously as a Liverpool fan, I really, really want them to get there. I do think Leicester and Chelsea will be there. And to be honest, if you're being honest, they're a bit more deserving than Liverpool based on this season as well.
Yeah, it's a full house with me going with Chelsea and Leicester. I think they're just the way Chelsea are kind of playing at the moment and able to get those. I believe like they have, since Tuchel has taken over, the best kind of stats in terms of everything except goals scored, I think. So there's kind of no stopping them. And obviously if the momentum, if they can beat Real Madrid later on, they'll have that momentum going into the last couple of games of the season.
Potentially, I mean, the only thing I would say is Leicester have probably the toughest run in of the top 5 or 6. So, do you know what? If do you know what? I'm not a big fan of West Ham, but part of me would kind of like to see them nick one of the spots. And listen, they're only 3 points behind Chelsea. They're 4 points ahead of Liverpool. So, you know, I think they have as much, if not more, of a chance to nip in there than Liverpool do. But just because it's a change of
because you never see that. You'd be like, oh, when was the last time West Ham were even there? Yeah, I'd be the same. If one of Leicester or Chelsea were to slip up, and Leicester do have quite a difficult run. Of course, like it'd be classic. It'd be like when Leicester won the league, and then Leicester were then in the Champions League. It's like, oh my God, Leicester in the Champions League. It's like playing a career mode on FIFA. Yeah, so West Ham in the Champions League with class.
And they did quite well, Leicester, didn't they? Quarterfinal, if I can remember correctly. But it kind of brings me back to, obviously Leicester won the league, so automatically get into the Champions League. But it kind of brings me back to the days of, wasn't it, Spurs and City fighting it out for fourth spot a good few years ago, and obviously Everton getting in. I think they pipped Liverpool, didn't they?
2005, that's why. And then they had to go to the qualifiers because they won it.
Yeah, but they got knocked out to, was it Villarreal? I think it was.
Yeah, it's brilliant. What a summer that was.
We might just finish like we always do, lads, on a bit of fantasy football. Obviously, with the rearranged fixtures, Man United are going to have 3 games in the week. So I'm just looking at my team here. I brought Greenwood in about 2 weeks ago, but I actually took out Rashford and I brought in Son, but I still have Fernandes. So I have 2 United players, potentially look at maybe getting a third one in there. But other than that, I have Martinez playing twice. Rudiger should be fit, playing twice. Luca Digne playing twice. Iheanacho playing twice. And then obviously more than likely I'm going to captain one of the United players. How's your team looking, Dave?
Listen, I'm relatively resigned that I will hover around about where I've been hovering for the last I don't know, 5 months. But I have currently got Shaw, Wan-Bissaka and Fernandes in my team, so they will be staying firmly in for that week. I'm kind of sick of the Pep roulette, but at the same time, are you pulling Diaz out? Are you pulling Cancelo out? Yeah, Cancelo I will probably take out just because there's a fairly low chance of him playing. But I had brought Rudiger back in, and didn't get a huge amount out of him, but now he's picked up an injury, so I've no problem taking him out. But it's really just such a coin toss. Like, fantasy is just such a coin toss for me at this moment in time, because, you know, I got really great points for the last week or two from Iheanacho and Mason Mount. And Jesse's gone off the boil a little bit, so I've no inspiring advice to give to anybody, and if you're listening to me, absolutely don't. Listen to the other David.
But before we go on to a hard there, I'm going to say, obviously the motivation last month of the season, that there obviously is a prize of 30 quid for manager of the month, which is obviously 10 quid more than your average manager of the month. O'Hara, you're in with a chance again of manager of the month. I think you just missed out on a couple of places below. I think it was Harry Quinn that won it. He was our champion last year. What's your kind of plan for this game week? Are you kind of biting the bullet and getting the 3 United players in, or dropping the City players out of your team? What way are you looking at it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like that, with the news only coming out about the triple week, for United, it'll be hard not to at least have two of them. So I have Shaw at the moment, so at least I have one. With them having 3 games, it'd be very hard to ignore having someone like Bruno Fernandes. So I'll probably look at getting him in. I've obviously had him for a lot of the season, but got him out a while ago.
Obviously, sorry, as well, Liverpool have a double game week as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so like that, I think I have Salah and Jota at the moment. So it's just hard, obviously, when you're coming to the end of the season, and this season in particular, because obviously there's all the fixture changes and pile-ups and stuff like that. So there's far more rescheduled games, but you have to be far more kind of aware of where the clubs are and what they have to fight for. Because like that, if City are playing some team near the bottom, you're obviously normally going to be like, Grant, need to get in De Bruyne, need to get in one of the defenders because they're going to get a clean sheet. But in a week or two, that, realistically, you nearly need to just stay away from City players, because Pep Roulette is obviously going to screw you. But also, they'll have won the league, so they're far less inclined to be going gung-ho, especially with the Champions League final now to be preparing for. So as you were saying, I'm in with a shout for the money positions in the league. I think I'm in 5th at the moment. The top 3 seem to be they've kind of pulled away. So I'm aiming to get up and finish 4th. So that's what I'm hoping to do. The team I have the team fairly well set up for this week. I'll make 1 or 2 changes, obviously. With, as I said, I'd probably get Fernandes in. But the thing with this week, obviously, because we knew it was going to be a double game week for, I think, 8 of the clubs, you still had to be aware of the fact that then most of those then had a blank following game week. So you obviously have to avoid the whole thing of, grand, I'm gonna have a whole starting 11 of double game weeks, and then you have 3 players playing the following week. So I think I have maybe 6 or 7 playing twice this week. But the others then, like, I have a couple of Tottenham players. Tottenham are playing the following week, and Tottenham have a decent run into the end of the season, as far as I know. So yeah, I think I have it fairly well balanced. And like that, I was happy just having Shaw, but I think I'll bite the bullet now. The fact that they have a triple week,
it is
to pass up on.
It is a tough week for fantasy football managers. In like you mentioned, the following week, week 36, is it? That there's obviously blank for a number of teams. So there's a lot of planning. I feel this week, obviously in anticipation of looking towards the following week, that you don't miss out on too much.
There's one I actually thought of just now. With that, the fact that it's a triple game week. Because remember, was it 2 game weeks ago when a lot of people still had their triple captain, and so triple captain Kane because they had a double game week, and obviously he scored twice in the first game, so he would have gotten 36 points from the first game, but then he hobbled off on the 90th minute and didn't play at all in the second game. I still had my triple captain at the time as well, and so was very tempted to play it that week, and so obviously I wasn't watching the match, because why would I watch a Tottenham match? But looking at it on live score and seeing that he had scored twice, so it was like, happy days. That's a good return for the captain. But then worrying then that I hadn't done the triple captain. But now that we were just talking about it, I still have my triple captain, and United have a triple game week. So I think that might have forced my hand, because I had forgotten it, but I had been actually thinking of doing the triple captain this week on a double game week player, because I kind of always usually do that. I'll usually wait for a double game week to play most of my chips, really. So that's the only one I have left. So I had been thinking of doing triple captain, but obviously didn't really have an idea who to play it on. But yeah, I think it might have just forced my hand now, and I'm just going to have to triple captain Fernandes for a triple game week.
So is this potentially a Liverpool fan wanting Man United to do well in, well, obviously not the Liverpool game, but in the other games, get you points, move you up the table. And I don't know how come the end of the season you could be thankful for captaining
100%.
United.
This is now. I'll be triple captain Fernandes, and I'll be looking for a hat trick in every game. And that'll, in fairness, if that happens, I'd end up probably winning the league if that happens. To be honest, but yeah, even like you were saying, except in the Liverpool match. But I remember years ago. It's so weird having conflicting emotions with fantasy players, because I remember years ago Liverpool were playing Wigan, and I think I had both Dirk Kuyt and remember your man Amir Zaki, who came in for like half a season for Wigan and was unbelievable.
The other footballer.
Yeah, exactly. I had both of them, and I remember saying to my dad, it was like, okay, Grant, you obviously want Liverpool to win, but I have Zaki, so I'd love him to score a couple of goals. And Dad was like, don't jinx it. Like, how can you be hoping for the player of the other team to score? And Liverpool won it 3-2, and Zaki scored twice. I think he got 2 like overhead kicks, and I was fucking delighted. So yeah, so like you were saying, I obviously don't, particularly want Fernandes to do well against Liverpool, but if Liverpool were to win 3-2 and Fernandes scored twice, happy days.
That's a nice way to finish on. A Liverpool fan wishing and hoping that Fernandes bags a couple of goals as his triple captain.
If Liverpool score more, that's the only way.
against Liverpool. He also said that bit.
We can cut that.
Just trying to be controversial on this podcast, because we all tend to agree with each other and we're all very nice to each other. So
yeah.
But lads, thanks for jumping on today. Really enjoyable chats. Good points of view and perspective on the protest last week. But obviously, United fans, we've the Roma game to look forward to on Thursday, and then obviously as FPL managers, we've all the weekend's games to look forward to on the weekend. But Dave O'Hara, thanks very much, guys, for joining the Fantasy Kickabout again for another week. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Take care, lads.